beautiful day. What a beautiful weekend, man. I hope everybody feeling blessed and manifested. And you know my style. We're going to get right into it. I got something special for you today. And what we're going to be talking about is the draw on liquidity. Okay. And this is going to be the last video that you will ever need to watch on how to find the draw on liquidity, right? It seems like a simple thing enough, right? But what you'll find is that a lot of beginner ICT students, even a lot of intermediate ICT students still have trouble, defining the draw on liquidity. Where's the draw? Where's the draw? Okay, and so if we are trading algorithmic time-based concepts, right? Or time-based algorithmic concepts. If you go back to any of Coach's videos and you look at that logo, under where it says Inner Circle Trader, it says what? Time-based algorithmic concepts, right? So in the interest of that, we have what? 1 day, okay? And 1 day is 24 hours, right? Okay, futures trade 23 of those 24 hours. And so what that allows us to do is to what? Basically break down 1 day into 4 equal segments of what? 6 hours, okay? And so that's simple enough, right? And so what that also basically tells us is that what? There are 2 12-hour periods per day, right? So we have what? 6 a.m. to, or excuse me, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And then we have 6 a.m. until 5 p.m., right? We got to take an hour. We need at least an hour break from making all this money, right? So, but nonetheless, so just considering that, right? We have 24 hours in a day. So we're going to do what? Divide that by 4. And that's going to do what? Give us 4 opportunities. Okay. Well, maybe we'll break it down by 2. Okay. So we have 2 12-hour segments. And so we'll look for 2 opportunities a day. You get what I'm saying? Right? So when we consider time in this fashion, here is what we end up with, okay? We will have highs and lows that are formed during 12-hour periods, but we will also have what? We will have the settlement or the close of what? Those previous 4-hour candles, or excuse me, those previous 12 or 6-hour candles, right? So we're talking 12, 6, and 3. And so as a matter of fact, before we put the levels on there, let me show you all something very quickly. You see this key over here where it says 12HH? HH is an hour high. Okay, so you see 12-hour high, 6-hour high, 3-hour high, right? HL, hour low, right? So 12-hour low, 6-hour low, 3-hour low. HC, 12-hour close, 6-hour close, 3-hour close, right? And these are the settlement prices, right? So I'm going to put that key back up there. Okay. I don't know why. You know what? Just get rid of it for right now. Don't delete it, but just hide it. Let's just hide it for right now, right? It's simple enough to understand, right? Let's do this. Let's look at where the highs and lows formed for the 12-hour period, right? Because this is really what? This is the macro draw on liquidity for the day, right? Okay. Including what? Previous day high. Okay. So let's go back to the start of the day. We got 6 p.m. right here. Guess what? Instantly swept what? The previous day high. Okay. And so we are accumulating, right? That accumulation measure for the day, for the week, right? Who's trading during this time, during the accumulation of the accumulation, right? Nonetheless, we have what? We are able to establish a 12-hour range, right? From 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Where's the high? Right here at 3:45 a.m., okay? Coming in at 29,985, okay? And where's the low in that 12-hour period, right? We're looking right here at 8:45, we got a low of 29,788. Something about those 45 candles making the high and the low, right? We'll let you ponder on that for a little bit, right? And so then what else do we have? Okay, so there is a overlapping 12-hour period, which is what? From 12 a.m. to 12 p.m., which gives us what? A low here that was formed at 9:30, okay? 29,719, okay? And so you see how we're establishing the drawn liquidity based on what? These particular segments of time, right? And so what we are able to do is, so for instance, right, let's look at the most current 12-hour high, okay? So this is going to be 6 p.m. We got 15 minutes left in the day. We can clearly see we're not going to sweep that 9:30 low, okay? We can go ahead and establish what? The 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. drawn liquidity, right? I don't know why it did that. Good Lord. Okay, so we can establish that as what? A 12-hour high, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., okay? So we'll go what? 06 through 18, okay? And so we see we have what? A 12-hour high. And then the 12-hour low for what? That period, 6 a.m. until 6 p.m., that was already formed here at 9, right? And when that came in at 9, guess what? It was also a 6-hour low, 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. That was also the low. So when 12 p.m. came in, we had what? A 6-hour sell side drawn liquidity that was formed, okay? So you see how that works? So what we've done is we've broken the market down into 12-hour segments and we've identified the drawn liquidity, right? And so the next question is, well, how do we actually trade that, right? And so you have your 12-hour sell side that's formed here, okay? You don't get the full 12 hours until when? 6 a.m. So if you are, what, a 12-hour candle trader, right, or a half-day trader, you are not trading until 6 a.m. because you're waiting for what? The drawn liquidity to be formed for what? The first 12 hours of the day, okay? And then you're trading based on that, okay? So let's see what we get here. We go to 6 a.m., okay? And actually, it is time to put on the 12-hour closes, right? And so what we know is what? There are 2 12-hour candles a day. That means that there are going to be 2 previous 12-hour closes a day, right? So you see this 12-hour close, 18 to 06, that's what? That is the close for the 6-hour candle, or excuse me, the 12-hour candle from what? 1800 hours to 6 a.m. Close where? We're on a 15-minute chart, so we're looking at the very last candle, 5:45 a.m., right? So that close is what? That's a 12-hour settlement, right? It's also a 6-hour settlement. It's also a 3, right? We know what? The market fractals up. It doesn't fractal down, right? So when we see this 12-hour close right here, here's 6 a.m., right? We see the draw that was placed at 3:45. We sort of work our way up there at 5 a.m. Missed it by 3 ticks. We work our way down. Okay, so we have an order block and a fair value gap. But in the interest of just working off of the key levels, right? We see that there is a closing overlap below what? The 12-hour close, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. at 9:38 1/4. And so what do? We see that closing overlap happened where? At 6:30, okay? The 6:45 to 7 a.m. candle comes right back up to where? What's the high? 29,938 1/4 to the tick, and gives you what? A beautiful entry based on the close or the settlement of the previous 12-hour candle, and it allows you to do what? It allows you to target the previous 12-hour sell side with very little capital exposure, very little risk, okay? So you can see there you're talking about a 20-to-1 trade, okay? Using what? The higher time frame measure of draw on liquidity. It's not difficult to find the draw. If can you divide 24 hours into two 12-hour segments and find the high and low? Then you can find the draw on liquidity. Can you take 24 hours and divide it into 4 equal 6-hour segments and find the highs and lows between those 4 6-hour segments? Then you can find the draw on liquidity. Can you go into what? 8 3-hour segments per day and find the highs and lows? Then you can find all of what? The draw on liquidities that matter, okay? And we're going to show you in this presentation why these are the draw on liquidities that matter, okay? And so you can see what's going on here. We get an exact entry, right, to the tick delivery with that close and overlap, right? 7.5 handles of capital exposure. You get 150.25 handles, taking it down to where? The previous 12-hour sell side. So that's the lowest low between what? 6 p.m. and 6 a.m., okay? It says 6 p.m. to 12, but it's really 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. So we made a correction there, right? So we take that to that, measure of sell side right there, right? And then what would the second opportunity be, right? Because there's only 2 12-hour candles in a day. And so based on this measure of finding, right, the draw on liquidity, right, and how to trade to the next draw, you have what? This 12-hour close, right? So 11:45 a.m., we're going to have 12 p.m. lunch. Okay, guess what? From 12 a.m. to 12 p.m., that's a 12-hour candle, okay? Or a 12-hour period. The 12-hour candle, okay, would be, the 2 12-hour candles, okay, would be from what? 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. and from 6 a.m. until 5 p.m., right? So the last one would be 11 hours, right? And what you have to understand is that, yes, there are only those 2 12-hour candles a day, but there is sort of a shadow sort of candle, if you will, where there's this 12-hour period from where? 12 a.m. until 12 p.m., okay? And so, no, that isn't one of the natural 12-hour candles that would show on your chart, okay? But it is still considered what? A 12-hour period. And so because of that, 12 a.m. to 12 p.m., this is also a 12-hour low, right? Okay? And so you see how you have these dual measures of sell side, right? Dual measures of buy side, right? This is the high from 12 a.m. to 12 p.m. as well, right? But it's also the high for what? 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., right? Up there at 29,985, the high that came in at 345 this morning, right? All right, so let's get back into it. That second opportunity, what was that second trade for the 12-hour candle traders, right? We see here is the 11:45 a.m. settlement, right? So that's the last 15 minutes of that 12-hour period, right? And also of what? That 6-hour period from 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. That 6-hour candle will form on your chart, right? And so what happens is at 11:59 we close at what? 29,844. So that's the settlement for the what? 12-hour candle, 12 a.m. to 12 p.m., right? It's kind of like a ghost candle, right? But it's also the settlement for what? The previous 6-hour candle, 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. And it's also what? The settlement for the previous 3-hour candle, 9 a.m. until 12 p.m., right? Okay. So that particular price, that's why it's extremely important. It's the settlement price for several candles, higher time frame candles, right? So 29,844. What happens at 12 a.m.? We open at 29,844 and a quarter, right? So we open just a tick above there. We wick into what the weekly electronic open at 29,851.50, and then we close below 844. That is considered a close and overlap, okay? The very next candle at 12:15, so between 12:15 and 12:30, what do we get? We have our close and overlap. We have our re-verification and rejection. 844 on the money again. Isn't that similar to this closing overlap below this 12-hour settlement, where we get what? A to the tick entry, 29,938 and a quarter. That is the actual key level, right? And that is the actual high of the candle, right? It didn't go one tick further. And the same thing here, the 12-hour close, right? And so this is the ghost 12 hours, because it isn't one. The only two 12-hour candles that are on a chart are what? 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., or 6 p.m., or 6 a.m. to 5 p.m., because that hour reset, right? But this 12-hour period that's sort of nested in between those two 12-hour candles, which is what? 12 a.m. to 12 p.m., right? That 12-hour settlement, right? That 6-hour settlement. Technically, it's a 6-hour settlement, a 3-hour settlement. But because of the overlap of 12-hour periods within the day, you get what? A beautiful, beautiful entry, a closing overlap. It opened a tick above and closed below, making it a closing overlap. The retest to the tick, and here is the second trade, okay? Stop where? At the high of the candle that closed below the key level, okay? And we do what? We target the next draw in liquidity, right? And so maybe for some of you, that would have been what? The 12-hour low that was the initial draw, right? And so you took it down to 788, okay? You took it down to 788 and you were satisfied, okay? So you just targeted the most recent 12-hour low. You didn't target this one, right? There's something that told you that it's going to fight to get down there and it ain't going to take it, right? Or you did what? You noticed that there was what? A 2-hour period, right? So we go back to from 12 p.m., we go back to 10 a.m., okay? And we look for that low. And you target that because that is what? 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. London close kill zone, right? And so you see how you would have been filled there, okay? For 102 3/4 handles, right? You get a nice 7-to-1 trade, 14 3/4 handles on the capital exposure, right? And a beautiful trade that only takes what? 2 candles to fulfill. It takes you 1 candle to get entered. It took you 1 candle to get TP'd, right? So 1 candle from entry to TP is really just 1 candle, 1 15-minute candle, and you are able to do what? Add another 102 3/4 handles on top of the 150 1/4 that you'd already taken, and that is how you use what? The 12-hour close or 12-hour settlement, along with what? The 12-hour buy side and 12-hour sell side, okay? Let's go right over to, we're going to go right over to the 6-hour closes, okay? And what you're going to see is that what? Some of the 12-hour closes, because they are also 6-hour closes, right? For instance, the 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. high, it is also what? The 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. high. So that's going to stay there, right? And then if we look here, we see that this is what? It is the low from 6 p.m. to 12 a.m., which is a 6-hour period, but it's also the low from what? 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. So these two highs, they are going to stay. This high and this low, they are going to stay. What's also going to stay is this shadow 12-hour period, right? So from 12 a.m. to 12 p.m., that's the 12-hour low, but it's also a 6-hour low, right? From 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. So that 6-hour low is going to stay there, okay? And what we'll find is that we have two other 6-hour drawn liquidities to the buy side from what, 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. We have this buy side here at 29,959 and a quarter, okay? And then as the day will end, we will do what? We will have another 6-hour period, right? And so you see how this 6-hour period is going to become a 12-hour buy side, right? This is a 12-hour sell side, but it's also a 6-hour, right? But then what we'll have is what? When the market closes in 1 minute, okay, market officially closed, right? We have what? We have a new 6-hour sell side, okay? Well, it's really a new, no, it's a new 6-hour sell side, right? Because the 12-hour, okay, so it's a 6-hour low, okay? And it's from what? It's from 12 to 18, okay? Really 5, but, 12 to 18, right? Okay, so we got the new, 6-hour sell side in there. Okay, now what's the new 6-hour buy side if that's the case, right? It's good that we're doing this video right when the market is closing so you can see how you're supposed to do this, right? Good Lord. Okay, so here's the new 6-hour buy side, right? So every time period you get what? A buy side and a sell side. It's not difficult to understand. You can go by 3 hours. Maybe you want to take 8 attempts a day. Right? So every 3 hours, you're looking for what? The previous 3-hour buy side and sell side. Maybe the previous 6-hour, you want to go a little bit wider, right? If the market has permitted that, right? Let's turn this into a 6-hour high. Okay, and that's going to be what? 12 to 18. Okay. And so, but in the interest of today, right? So these two kind of just formed when the market ended, right? But in the interest of today, what were those particular key levels, right? We're going to go ahead and look at the 6-hour closes, right? Okay. And how those offered several opportunities, especially the first 6-hour close for the day, right? So what are we talking? 6 p.m. to 12 a.m. Here is 11:45. That's the close of the first 6-hour candle of the day. That settlement price is important. You can see that as we do what? Trade throughout the day. Right? Okay. So when we're talking about the 6-hour period, okay, and those 6-hour closes, right? The first 6 hours of the day, it does not offer. It doesn't offer you. There's a little. It takes a little bit more skill to have to be trading this right here. And on Sunday, okay, maybe not so much for the other days of the week, but on Sunday, you really just want to let the first 12 hours of the day work itself out. That those first 2 or 3. 4-hour candles, right? You really want to allow it to work itself out for the day, because what you're doing when you trade Sunday Asia is you are trading the accumulation period for that Monday, and you are trading the accumulation period for that week. Okay, you gotta think of things in that term, in those terms. Like where are we in price? Yes, in premium or discount, right? Y'all know that's my thing, premium and discount, right? But in terms of where we are in the cycle, right? Not really a good idea to be trading during this time, right? So maybe we didn't consider this until later that day, right? Because there isn't really a clear setup, right? Even if you are a PD array trader where you went down to the lower time frames and you were looking for what? Some measure of a draw, right? Okay. So this 6-hour close for 12 or for 6 p.m. to 12 a.m., it doesn't become pertinent until the end of the, not the end of the day, but the second half of the day, right? What we do have is what? From 12 a.m. to 6 a.m., that same 5:45 close at 9:38 and a quarter. You see how I'm saying what? It's a 12-hour close, but it's also what? A 6-hour close, right? And so from either direction, right, this key level, super, super, super pertinent, right? Super pertinent. 29,938 and a quarter. So from a 6-hour close and a 12-hour close, there was your trade. But considering the 6-hour close as the key level that we look for closing overlaps over, then what you get is, okay, the first overlap came at 7 a.m., right? Because here goes the key level, right? We don't get any candle that closes below that key level until when? Here, at 7 a.m. But then we get a candle that closes above it. It does not stop you out. So if maybe you held on, right? But that once this candle closes, that is an invalidation, right? And so the rules say if you get invalidated, even if you aren't stopped out, you need to close the trade. That's what the rules say. Don't break the rules. Right? You see how here you could have broken the rules and said, okay, well, I didn't get stopped out, so I'm not going to close the trade. I see that this 15-minute candle closed back above 870, 850. That's the 6-hour close from 6 p.m. to 12 a.m. I see that I got invalidated here at 7:15 a.m., but I didn't get stopped out. I'm going to hold on to it. And then the market is generous to you. It does go your direction, but sometimes it won't. And when it doesn't, that's when you would have been over leveraged, right? So if you get invalidated, right, we do get a close below. 7 a.m. closes at what? 876.50. That is what? 2 handles lower than the 6-hour close from what? 6 p.m. to 12 a.m. That invalidation, you needed to close the trade, right? You would have been rewarded handsomely with what? Another clean opportunity and what? A chance for second entry right here, okay? So we do what? We get another closing overlap below the 6-hour close at 878.50. We get that at what? At 7:30 a.m. So 7:45 to 8 a.m. you get your entry, okay? And so here is the second opportunity from trading what? A 6-hour overlap, right? Or not a 6-hour overlap, excuse me. A close below a 6-hour close, right? An overlap below a 6-hour close. So let's get that trade on there, right? Because here's what it would have been. We would have been at 870, 878.50, okay? So 870, 850, and we would have been targeting what? The same draw that we would have been targeting from where? If we got in up here, okay, at 938 and a quarter. You understand? So you would have gotten your fill here, and it would have instantly taken you down, okay, about 45 minutes to an hour, and you hit your TP for 90 handles and 90 and a quarter handles, okay? So this particular trade is it is very steep. It's almost a 2.5 to 1, okay? Almost a 2.5 to 1. And so there's the second entry, right? You see what the first entry was, right? It's the same thing as the 12-hour close, right? Because this 5:45 a.m. candle, once that closes right there on the 15-minute chart, we know what? That's the close for a 12-hour and a 6-hour period. 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., 12 a.m. to 6 a.m., right? So that's a dual close, right? A dual settlement price right there. 29,938 and a quarter. We put our high at the high. We put our stop at the high of the candle that closed below the 4-hour close. We enter on the next candle to the tick. Retest is so beautiful to see. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing to see. And what we're showing you is what? This is the last drawn liquidity video that you will ever need, because how simple is it to what? Delineate 12-hour segments, find the close of those 12-hour candles, right? You're taking 24 hours a day and you are dividing it into 4 6-hour segments, and you're finding the close of the previous 6-hour segment, right? How simple is that, right? So no, a closing price of a candle is not a draw on liquidity, but what you need to understand is how the draw forms, right? Okay. So what do you see here? Okay. Here is the 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. high, right? And do you see how that marks the high of that 12-hour period? But you see how it opens, right? It opens at 9:39, right? So just 3 handles above the close, right, of the previous, what, 12-hour, 6-hour period, right? These are the most pertinent key levels, right? Okay. Let's do again, right? So you get this trade right here, right? From 7:45 to 8:30. And so when I say let's do it again, what do I mean? Okay, so we go back up to the key level. We close above it at 10 a.m. We close at 881 and a quarter. That's higher than 878.50 to me, right? And then at 10:15, so 10:15 to 10:30, we close back below it, right? That's a closing overlap. We're going to do what? We're going to sell the fuck out of that 4-hour close right there, okay? So we're going to sell it, okay? Again, why? Because the setup is there. High at the, or stop at the high of the candle that closed below, right? And we do what? We target the next draw. We target the draw again, right? Another 90 handles. You get another 4 to 1, okay? You understand how that works, man? And so once you get that trade, okay, you maybe you're out of it, maybe you held on to it, right? Price you get a closing overlap below the weekly open. So when you were down here and maybe you were expecting this draw, why didn't you get it? Closing overlap, right? You got yeah, so this is 10:30, 10:45. There's 11 30-minute closing overlap below the weekly electronic open at 851.50. It's got to come back, right? But it comes back where? In time, where it makes what? Another 6-hour, 12-hour closing overlap below 844, okay? And we see that that entry, if you were somebody that played off of the 6 hours, you could have also taken that trade again, okay? Or taken it for the first time, excuse me. And then we already discussed that, why the 10 to 12, the 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. period, why that would have been the low for this particular trade, right? So really what you see is you were offered 4 trades, right? For the 6 hour, time frame, right? So you're somebody, I want to play the draw on liquidity based on 6-hour segments, right? 4 6-hour segments a day, right? So before we showed you how to find what? The 2 trades with the 12-hour closes. Here are the 4 trades with the 6-hour closes. And guess what? If we consider, right, the most pertinent 6-hour close from the previous day, which would be Friday, here's 11:45. That does what? That sets up what? A 6-hour candle from 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. And also what? A 12-hour close from 12 a.m. to 12 p.m. So this is from Friday. And you see how we sort of closed below that and used it several times today. Several times. You see what's going on around that level, that 6-hour close. So the 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. candle from last Friday, and how we do what? Okay. we do get a close and overlap below that level. It does come all the way back up to the weekly open, right? And so, yeah, you would have bought here and stop would have been way up here. We're not really a fan of that, right? And we wouldn't have sold it there anyways. Excuse me, I said bought. But listen, you see this 1045 candle, when it closes below the 6-hour close from Friday, 814.25, why wouldn't we have sold it right there? Because we don't sell discount levels, we sell premium levels in the overlap. The rules don't change, right? So there's an overlap and there's multiple levels. Well, here's how the question becomes, well, what level do I sell? Okay, well, in any dealing range, what level do we sell? We sell the premium. Instant. Question answered. Done. So you would have been selling the weekly electronic open. This wouldn't have become applicable until after this, right? And considering what? It's 11 a.m. right here. You know that in 1 hour you get what? A new 6-hour, 12-hour candle. You're not going to trade. Even if you see that, right? You would have waited here and you would have been in here, right? And then 12:15 comes along. We finally close back below it. There was, if you're thirsty and you just had to trade more, even though you got 4 of the most beautiful, cleanest to the tick entries. I'm talking about not one tick of drawdown, right? So when we say that to the tick thing, that's what you need to understand. That means that you got filled on the trade and price didn't go against you, not even one tick. Not one tick did it go against you before it filled your objective, right? So then again, from here, right, your objective would have been what? The same 10 to 12 low, okay? London close, kill zone, sell side. So, yeah, this would have been your entry would have been down here, 814.25. Let me make sure it's right. All right, so 814.25. Stop at the high of the candle that closed below. That's right there. It's a big ass wick. It's a 2.56 to 1, so almost a 3 to 1. Nice little something, right? 76.25 handles. But there were better trades, right? Using the previous day's 6-hour close, right? But if you just had to trade one more time, right? Or if you were late and you couldn't find your way in, right? So you see what? The 6-hour setup, right? Based on the 6-hour draw on liquidity, it will do what? It will offer you 4 trades a day. 6 times 4 is what? 24. Would you look at that? Let's see if we can wrap this thing up. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about 3-hour time. Okay? And then we're going to look at the 3-hour closes. Okay? And then we're going to look at the 3-hour highs and lows. Okay? And how those are pertinent structures as well for what? I told you, this is the last draw on liquidity video that you're ever going to need. Now you know exactly where to look for the draw, how to find the draw, and how to find what? Entries to attack the opposing draw. Okay, so now you have 2 things, right? You know how to find the draw on liquidity for what? These time-based algorithmic concepts, right? Because there's 24 hours in a day. So there's 2 12-hour candles. So there's 4 6-hour candles. So there's 8 3-hour candles, right? And so we know what? At any one time, we have 2 major draw on liquidities, right? Or 4, because there's 2 4-hour candles, right? So we have 4 major draw on liquidities, right? We will have what? 8 intermediate draw on liquidities, right? Because there's 4 6-hour candles, each of them with a high or low, right? And then we would have what? 16, 16, not intermediate, but 16 minute draw on liquidities based on what? Those 3-hour cycles, right? Because there's 8 3-hour candles in a day. Each of them have a high and a low, right? So now that you understand that, right, and you know how do you attack the draw, you need to use what? The closing price of that previous 3-hour, 6-hour, 12-hour candle as we've been showing you here today. okay? And with what? Some extremely precise to the tick. That to the tick thing is important because, like I said, what you need to understand about that is it is showing you what? It's showing you that your trades based on these entries, they don't have any drawdown. You get filled and the market goes your direction, right? No sweat. Let's talk about the first 3 hours of the day, okay? First 3 hours of the day, there's what, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Well, that sell side, right? That same sell side, 29,788. You see why it's so important and why there's so much price action going on around there? It's a 3-hour low, it's a 6-hour low, it's a 12-hour low. You understand? And so what we look at is what? If we know that this is a 3-hour period, here's the last 15-minute candle, the close of that candle, 29,803. That is what? The settlement price for the first 3-hour candle of the day, 29,803, okay? And we will get back to that key level soon, right? Okay, so as we continue through the day, we got 9 p.m. to 12 a.m., okay? And so we're looking at what? The high in between that period, okay? And so what we see is there's the DOL here, okay? Coming in at what? Coming in at 29,899 and a quarter, okay? 29,899 and a quarter. So 9 p.m. to 12 a.m., that is the actual high, okay? And then the low from that period, 29,791.50. We can go ahead and put that in there. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Let's see here. I think we might have to make a new little template thingy. Okay, yeah. All right, that's fine. Okay, so let's go to style. It's got to be one of those. And all right, so we got to make a new template real quick. I thought I had it made already. I personally don't go down to the 3-hour highs and lows because once you start going, I'm a higher time frame trader, guys. I just don't do that. I just don't. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with doing it. So 21 to 0000. Okay. Yeah, it's just not something that I do personally. Okay. So let me do this. I'm gonna take the 12-hour highs and lows off. And why is this out of its box, of its section? Okay, so we're gonna get the 12s. Okay, so there were some new ones that we had to put in there. Okay. So there was some new stuff that had to go in there. So, okay. So now, yeah, because we just want to focus on the 3-hour, highs and lows, and the 3-hour settlements throughout the day, right? Okay. So let's look at this, right? Because we're approaching 45 minutes. Okay. So let's see if we can start to wrap this up. Okay. This is the last one. Okay. And what is this? A 6-hour, that's a 6-hour low. So let's get that in this box and let's get that off of there. Okay. I only want the 3-hour closes and the 3-hour highs and lows. Okay. So let's see here. So we talked about the first 3-hour, second 3-hour segment of the day, right? So we see those sell sides right there, okay? And so we know that that major sell side, we really have to put them back in there because those are the major ones, right? Okay, right. So that 3-hour sell side, we already know it's 3-6-12. It's a major sell side, but this one right here is just what? It's a 3-hour and a 6-hour. Okay. Okay, so even you could consider that a period of 9 hours, right? So from 9 p.m., right, all the way over to 6 a.m. Okay, so that is the low, right, for that 9 hour period, right? That's a sell side, right? And you see what happens when we get there. You get a nice rejection. You get both of them in one, right? So let's do this. Let's keep going forward, and we have a few 3 hour periods, a couple of 3 hour closes that need to be labeled. Okay, so this 3 hour period is the close. Okay, so this is a 3 hour close from what, 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. Okay, last night. Okay, and then we see what, this 3 hour period from 12 to 3, and then we have what, this 3 hour period from 3 to 6. 938 and a quarter, our star player for the day, right? So yeah, some of the closes, as you can see, like I'm saying, these closes, okay, are what? They fractal, okay? So a 12-hour close is also going to be what? It's going to be a 6 hour, it's going to be a 3 hour, right? But when you consider these with the 3 hour highs and lows, right? You see, we got these particular 3 hour periods, right? And we consider the draw on liquidity there. Okay, so we have the low for 9 to 12 here coming in at 29. Oh shit, excuse me. Okay, so coming in at 29, 791.50. Okay, and then we have another 3 hour period from 12 to 3. Let's get that sell side on there, because that is what considered a draw on liquidity, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and get that delineated, right? So this is a 3 hour low, and that's going to be what, 12 to 03, so 00 to 03, right? And let's go forward. So we know that what, the 3 to 6 a.m. 3 hour period, that high, that particular high right there, that is it's sticking, right? It is what, as we got to 6 a.m. So as we got to 6 a.m., this high was confirmed as what, a 12-hour, 6-hour, 3 hour high, right? Okay, so you understand how that works, and it would also be considered what, 9 hour high as well, right? So give me 1 second, guys. Okay, it's there. It's there. Okay, so let's talk about this now, right? So we're looking at these particular, draw on liquidities, right? And I'm gonna hide this one for right now. Okay. Oh shit, the wrong one. That's the wrong one. We meant to hide that one. We're looking at this draw right here from 9 to 12, right? And so what do you see, right? We're waiting for a close and overlap above that level, and we do get one. Price comes back down to 8.99 and a quarter to the tick. You understand what I'm saying about, right? If you understand that this is how you find the draw. Why is that the draw? Why is that the buy side? It's the highest high for what? A 3 hour segment. We've gone through 12-hour segments, 6-hour segments, and now we're finally doing 3 hour segments. And guess what? As these opportunities were to the tick, these 3 hour segments, right? So you're some measure of a scalper or something. It would also offer you what? The same opportunity. So you get in at your closing overlap above what? The buy side, right? The highest high between what? 9 p.m. and 12 a.m. That comes in at 29,899 and a quarter, okay? And so your draw on liquidity, right? In that instance, maybe you were looking at targeting something to the left of the chart, right? But we didn't go up and take that high as a lot of people expected, right? And so let's see here. You have here from Wednesday, August 5th, you have your regular trading hours open, which is another key pertinent level that we use, that we keep, right? So that could have been your target. You could have also had a time-based target, right? You could have also had a time-based target, right? So you have, here is 2 a.m. and here's 2:15. And so maybe you were trading to the high of that, you know, the start of that 2 a.m. candle, right? So many opportunities, so many different things that you could have done to target the upside here, right? And then so maybe you held even after 3 a.m. opened, right? Because your stop is here, right? There's the close and overlap. Let's move this out of the way just for a second, right? Or get rid of it for a second. Here is the 1 a.m. closing overlap, right? And so what happens is that 1 a.m. closing overlap, 15-minute, you get your entry when at 1:45, right? And then you sort of this 2:45 close, right? That's the close of a 3-hour period, right? And so what that lets you know is what? You have a hourly closing overlap above what? The previous 3-hour buy side at 29,899.25. So you would enter there, your stop there, and you would ride that thing up, right? So yes, there was this entry, but in the interest of what? The closing overlap, you go to the higher time frame, right? To the hourly. Okay. And you see what? It was the hour of what? 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. that closed above that key level. Yes, there is a closing overlap that filled within this hourly candle that took us higher. But once this hourly candle closes above what? The previous 3-hour buy side at 899.25, it's going to come back. Okay. And then we're going to go up and attack what? The RTH open. Okay. From last Wednesday. Okay. So let's go back to the 15-minute. And so you can see how that would have panned out and why. Yeah, the 1:45, that's cool. It did give you an entry on the 15-minute. But once at the end of the hour, right, once 2 a.m. comes in right here and you're still closed above there, you know for sure that what? Yeah, I got my 15-minute overlap, right? But now the hour has overlapped over that key level. It's going to come back again. And so this was the preferable entry win right at 3 a.m. Okay. Takes you up to a target. Maybe you have a time-based target to get out win at the macro, right? So, 350 is where you decided to get out, or maybe 345 you decided to get out, right? I personally like the trade. I think it's a dope little trade, right? I think it's a dope little trade to take 66 handles. It's a 3.59 to 1, okay? And so you see you would have got your fill here. Stop would have been here. You did take a good bit of a drawdown, good bit of drawdown, but it was quick. It was, it was fast. It didn't hurt, right? And it takes you up to your target, right? 3:50 a.m. you get out, or you are targeting 974, right? You're targeting the regular trading hours open from when? All the way back here on August 5th, okay? There's 9:30, there's August 5th, there's the open. Oh my Lord, look at that. It happens to be an order block as well, right? So maybe that was your thing, whatever the case may be. you see how you can use that to target, right? Let's go for it because we got to wrap this thing up. We're at 54 minutes on the dot now, and we're supposed to be getting out of here on the 9, right? Let's look at the 3-hour close. Man, we've gone over 938 and a quarter. That's a 12-hour close, a 6-hour, 3-hour. We understand that. But let's look at the first 3-hour, actual 3-hour close looking back. 245, that 245 candle that closed right there on the 15 minutes. So we know that that's 12 a.m. to 3 a.m. Here's the settlement price for that candle. It's 908.75, okay? Where do we get a closing overlap? We get it right here at 7 a.m., okay? Right here at 7 a.m. And what do we get? We get closing overlap, and right here, the close is at 909 and a quarter. Guess what? That is an invalidation, right? And so you're supposed to wait for what? The next closing overlap, which you got here at 7:30, right? But then where you had this, right, 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. 3-hour candle, right? That settlement price, that seemed like what, after this 7:30 a.m. overlap, that would have been the entry. But guess what? Do you see the 3-hour buy side from what, 9 p.m. to 12 a.m.? Do you see that bad boy right there, and how that was the entry, and how we say what? You get a closing overlap, right? So 7:30 to 7:45, we get a closing overlap below what? 2 of our key levels, right? The 3-hour close, right? So the 3-hour settlement from 9 to 12, and then what? The actual high of that period. So you see what the algorithm chose? It chose the high of that period to begin to continue to sell off. And so there's what? There is another opportunity for you to sell the market, right? There is another trade that was available today to the downside using what? 3-hour drawn liquidity, right? That's the high, the buy side from what? 9 to 12, okay? And so we take that, right? And we use that trade to do what? Attack the 12-hour sell side, right? 3-hour buy side is the actual entry, 8.99 and a quarter, right? 8.99 and a quarter, so we're talking what? Here is the candle that closed below the key level. So the high of that candle is our stop. That gives us what? 15 3/4 handles of capital exposure, right? And we do what? We're able to tackle a nice 7-to-1 trade, trading it down to 788 or the 12-hour low. So you see how many different ways, whether you're attacking this thing from using the 12-hour draw, whether you're using the 6-hour draw, right? Maybe you're using the 9-hour. We haven't talked about that one. But maybe you're using the 3-hour draw, right? The 3-hour draw, its buy sides, right? And what? The closes of those particular 3-hour candles, right? And so if you obeyed the rules here, right, where you got a close and overlap, you got invalidated because that is a close below, a close above. We don't care if it's 1 tick. If it closes above 1 tick, that's an invalidation. You got to close the trade for your small loss, right? You do get what? Another closing overlap here. And if you're patient, what? You get what? A really, really, really good entry, okay? A really good entry, and it takes you, right? Literally barely any drawdown, right? Volatility, yes, but barely any drawdown, right? So let's do this. There's a 3-hour, there is a 3-hour close, right? Well, this is a 6-hour close. You know, a 6-hour close is also a 3-hour close. So you see those things right there, right? So this is also why, you know, sometimes you might feel like going down to the, you might feel like going down to the 3-hour closes or 3-hour buy sides, it can become a little bit redundant, if you will. And this is why, like, as you see me right here, where I was like, oh, wait a minute, there's another that's 11:45. That's the 12-hour, the shadow 12-hour, and the actual 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. candle, the actual 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. candle, right? So, you know, you could label this as 09 to 12 lunch as the settlement, right? It's still the same 844, right? And you're still going to do what? Get the same short opportunity, right? Close and overlap high at the candle that closed below, or excuse me, stop at the high of the candle that closed below. I'm still messing that up. I've been trying to say that right all day and still can't say it right. But then what? Your target, the 10 to 12 London kill zone sell side. Boom. There you go, right there. 102 3/4 handles, 14 3/4 handles of capital exposure. It's still the same trade, right? And so now you know how to find what? The drawn liquidity. And not only do you know how to find the drawn liquidity, but you also know how to do what? You know how to use what? The settlement price, the close of those said 3-hour closes, 12-hour closes, 6-hour closes, right? The 12-hour highs and lows, right? Now you know how to use all of those things to identify the drawn liquidity. And you will never, as long as you do this every day, you will never need to know. You will never need to ask, you will never need to ask, how do I find the drawn liquidity? Go to the previous 12 hours, mark out the high and low, and then do the same thing. Go to the previous 6, mark out the high and low. Go to the previous 3, mark out the high and low. You have your drawn liquidity. Mark out the closes and look for closing overlaps after a drawn liquidity is taken. Look for those closing overlaps and then do what? Trade to the opposing draw, right? These are concepts that you will not find taught by any other, former ICT student like myself. You won't find these from Coach himself. These ideas are, they are truly proprietary, and we're sharing them with you because, for several reasons. One, we have, there's a lot of IP theft in this community. Let's just say that. And not to end things on a negative note, but we just want you to understand why are we all of a sudden giving out all of this information. We're not going to charge you for it. There ain't going to be a paywall. There's not going to be a fucking Discord. There is a chat, a community, and that's that. You learn the model. You learn how we define time, as we did in this video, how we define the drawn liquidity, right? Not just choosing arbitrary, enter 1 minute candle highs and lows, equal highs, equal, all that type of stuff. If that's what you like to do, that's fine. If it works for you, that's fine. But what we are doing is a very precise thing here. As you can see, these to the tick entries from 938 1/4 all the way down to the 12-hour sell side low, right? This entry from that 6-hour close at 844 to the tick entry right here. You understand what I'm saying? 645 on the entry, 1215 on the entry, right? We haven't even begun to talk about timing yet, and how do you time and anticipate these things, and how do you incorporate these draws on liquidity, right? How do you incorporate these DOLs and those particular high time frame candle settlements, right? The closes for the 12-hour, 6-hour, 3-hour candles. How do you incorporate that with the higher time frame average ranges? Stick around. Keep your heads in the books. Keep studying. The next video will get more into timing, right? We weren't even planning on getting into timing, right? But we just felt inspired with the price action today, right? Good luck, good trading this week. Keep your heads held high where they belong.
And y'all stay tuned. I appreciate everybody that's been watching my videos. Yeah, that's the one thing that I wanted to say too. Everybody that's been supporting me and watching my videos, I thank you. I thank all of you, and I appreciate all of you so much. And I'm very happy and I'm very satisfied that you're finding value with what we're talking about here. These are truly the most unique perspectives on algorithmic trading, on smart money concepts that you will find, right? I am that unique student that did find something, okay? And we'll leave it there. I appreciate y'all checking me out. I'm out.